A woman was sold like an object on the street only because she could not have children. But the man who bought her really wanted to free her. Don't miss this touching story where real love comes not from blood, but from the heart. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel. The rain didn't fall from the sky that day, but seemed to come from within, quiet, calm, and deep. People were standing around the young woman, who was standing barefoot on the wet wood, but no one looked at her. Perhaps they would sink into the ground in shame if they looked, or they would have to admit that they had given up on them. Her name was Amelia, but no one had pronounced this name for a long time. She was standing on a footbridge that could hardly pass for a platform. A few boards, 2 broken boxes. Behind them, an elderly woman with a stern look, Amelia's mother-in-law Ingret. Her shirt hung down to her knees. Her voice was sharp as steel. She had buried her husband and was digging the grave for her daughter-in-law. "She's skilled with her hands," she said, pointing to the woman. "She is neither sick nor does she have debts. But she can't have children. That means it's useless for my son now. God have mercy." Her voice grew louder. "Does anyone want a silver coin? For a day, a year, maybe a lifetime. I don't care." The crowd was silent. Even the wind seemed to have stopped. No one moved. Only a few people looked furtively at the priest. The priest bowed his head. And the sheriff? He wasn't there. Intention or fear, who knows? But no one said a word against a young woman being offered like a thing in the rain. Amelia didn't cry. She didn't tremble. Her silence disturbed the crowd more than tears would have done. They expected an outcry, a collapse. But she only looked ahead, beyond the houses, beyond the fields, as if she had long since left her body and was watching another life. Her dress was gray. For years, nothing white had remained in her life. The trouser legs were torn, the sleeves patched umpteen times. The rain stuck the dress to her body, but she didn't move. It was as if even life was no longer necessary. Finally, someone stepped forward. It was a man with a hard face and thick fingers, Martin, the owner of the pub in the area, with a half-extinguished cigar in his mouth and a silver coin in his hand. "I'll take it," he said quietly. He put the money on the board without even looking at Amelia. "She cleans the floor, carries bottles." Ingret was satisfied. She clapped her hands. "Sold," she said. That's how simple the word was, like judgment, conscience, and humanity. Amelia took a step. Without looking up, she climbed down from the rotten platform. She didn't look the man in the face. What would it have changed? Just at that moment, a noise was heard. Hoof beats on the ground. Slowly, rhythmically. At first, no one turned around. Horses usually brought bad news. But then, they saw the man. A tall man, his beard thin, but his face hard, his clothes full of mud. 2 babies in his arms, tightly embraced, but still trembling. The man didn't say a word at first. He came to the platform, looked at Amelia. There was no one else for him. Ingret stood in his way. "I said it was sold. No turning back." The man looked at the woman, then Martin, then Amelia. Silently, he pulled a silver coin out of his pocket, laid them next to the other. "I'm not buying," he said quietly but firmly. "I'm just saying that she can't stay here." Nobody knew what to say. This silence was sharper than any look. Amelia raised her head a little. Their eyes met. There was neither desire nor pity in his eyes, just a familiar pain. "What's your name?" Ingret asked disparagingly. "Daniel," he said. "They don't know me." "You don't have to." Martin shrugged his shoulders. "I didn't want her anyway. Take the money, take the girl." Daniel didn't even shake his head. He passed one of the babies to Amelia. She took it without hesitation. For the first time, her arms loosened, her fingers opened. The child stopped crying. The silence was no longer painful. It had a meaning now. The rain was still falling. Amelia and Daniel set off together. The crowd made way. No one called after them, neither Ingret nor the others. No one asked Amelia anything at that moment. And she didn't ask anything. "Where are we going? Why did you help? Who are these children?" None of that. That night they came under a roof that did not drip. Inside it smelled of wood, milk, and silence. Daniel put the other baby in a small cradle. Then he turned to Amelia and said only, "There is a bed in the loft. Dry enough. That's all there is to it." Amelia just nodded. She didn't need a bed or words at that moment. Only peace. In the silence, life felt alive for the first time. And maybe she didn't have to run away this time. The next morning, Amelia woke up before the sun rose. When she woke up, her hands were still on the baby. The little body breathed calmly, and held on to her fingers as if that were the only thing he could hold on to in this world. For the first time, she had not felt a nightmare in her sleep, but a weight. But this weight was not the voice of the past, but that of the future. When she came down from the loft, Daniel was already awake. There was movement in the hut, but no conversation. It was as if both of them knew what to do even without words. She controlled the babies. Daniel was chopping wood outside. As she watched him through the ajar door, she quietly wondered, why did this man take me? But part of her was afraid to know the answer to that question. The cabin was small but tidy. Everything had its place. The stove was burning. 2 cradles were illuminated by the light that came through the window. Amelia washed her hands with warm water and changed the children's diapers. Then she found some oats on the small kitchen shelf, which she mixed with milk. The porridge she cooked quietly would not only satiate the babies, but also warm their insides a little. In this strange house, she made herself invisible. No one had told her what to do, but she had learned to exist in silence. When Daniel came in, he had 2 small logs in his hand. There was mud on his hands. There was something in his gaze, neither attention nor possession. It was more like he was weighing up. "The children are quiet," he only said. Amelia nodded. They ate. They are still very small. That was their first conversation. Short, simple, but it was the beginning of something. They didn't talk much that day, but they were together. Amelia cleaned the house. She tied strips of fabric around the legs of the cradles so that they wouldn't squeak at night. Daniel repaired the fences. In the evening, Amelia bathed the babies and wrapped them in blankets. Daniel took an old chair out of the attic and began to repair it. Over time, this strange partnership became deeper. They owed each other nothing, but they were not a burden to each other either. An unspoken order arose between them. Daniel went to the stable in the morning. Amelia took care of the house. At noon, they ate together. In the evening, they sat silently by the fire. There was still little talking, but the silence was no longer hard as stone. It was soft, even comforting. One afternoon, when it was raining outside, Amelia came into the living room with a small piece of fabric. She had embroidered a pattern on it to decorate the cradles. "Is that a girl or a boy?" she asked, looking at the baby. Daniel answered without looking up. "The right one is Jacob, the quiet one. The leftist is Leo. He always kicks at night." Amelia smiled. For the first time, everything was so clear. At that moment, a knot in her was loosened. She was no longer just the one who took care of the children, but someone who really knew her. Daniel never spoke about his past. Amelia didn't ask either, but she tried not to bring her own past with her. But sometimes, when her gaze went into the void, you could see the tiredness of a woman who had been deprived of motherhood. Her pain was not visible, but it hung in every corner of the hut. One night, Amelia slammed her hand on the edge of the chest in the attic and cut the palm of her hand. The blood flowed immediately. Daniel quickly came to her, tore off a piece of fabric from his shirt. "Wait, let me help," he said, but Amelia withdrew her hand. "I'm used to it. I can do it on my own." But Daniel didn't stop. He bandaged her hand gently. "I'm sorry you're used to it." At that moment, there was not only silence between them, but something else. Maybe it was the first time someone was there for her. After that night, something changed between them. When they looked into each other's eyes, there was meaning, even without words. There was a step between them that had not yet been taken, but remained noticeable. And this step was not from the past, but the first sign of a possible future. Amelia was no longer just the one looking after the babies at night. She sang songs to them, melodies from her own childhood that she thought she had long forgotten. When the babies were calm, she too found peace. But she didn't know that everything could change in a single night. For far away, at a gloomy table, sat someone with hard hands and full of anger in his voice, Ingret, and that night, he took Amelia's name into his mouth again. This time she wanted not only money, but also revenge. And the path had long been mapped out. The storm was approaching. He would break the silence and lay like a shadow over peace. That night the wind shifted. Amelia's hair was blown to the side as she stood next to the cradle of the babies. The curtains moved slightly. Everything seemed normal, but the air in the hut had suddenly changed. Daniel paused as he put wood in the stove. The noise from the chimney was deeper than usual. He had felt it too. Somewhere in the distance, something invisible was coming. The next day passed quietly. Amelia mended Jacob's socks, brought Leo into the sun. Daniel checked the fences, but his gaze kept wandering to the horizon. He saw nothing, but his instinct told him otherwise. This peace would not last long. And then came the expected. In the afternoon, the sound of hooves could be heard, as if they were pressed deep into the earth. When Amelia stepped outside the door, she saw an old carriage driving through a fine cloud of dust. A man unknown to her was steering her, but behind him sat someone with a stern face behind glasses. Ingret. Her hair was whiter, her lips narrower, but her gaze still sharp, still judging. Daniel was the first at the door. He put his hand on the door frame, but did not close the door. Amelia watched from inside. At that moment, her legs became heavy. When she thought of the babies, her chest tightened. Ingret had narrowed her eyes. "Beautiful hut," she said with disgust. "Seems like you've made yourself a toy family. But now it's enough." Daniel did not answer. He only lifted his head slightly and looked into her eyes. "Peter is dead. So my son, everything that remains, including the inheritance, must be reorganized. Amelia was his wife. It has to go back to where it belongs." These words hit Amelia like a cold knife in the heart. Where it belongs. For the first time, she felt she belonged somewhere. In a quiet, simple but real place. Daniel's voice was harsh but calm. "You should have thought of that when you sold it. Legally, you no longer have a right." Ingrid lowered her head. "I won't argue with you. But these children, you have no right to take care of them. No one is her mother." At that moment, Amelia came to the door. She barely stood, but her face remained motionless. "I'm not her mother, that's true," she said quietly. "But I love her. It doesn't work with love. It works with signatures, with documents. If I have to go to court, I'll do it." Daniel took a step forward. "Then go. I'll get there too. And I'll remind you, this woman was sold like a thing. And these children have received more attention in their arms than they have ever received from you." Ingrid's eyes narrowed. "You can't protect them forever." Daniel smiled, but there was no warmth in that smile. But she is no longer alone. As the carriage moved away, Amelia's knees buckled. Daniel held her by the arms and slowly sat her down. Nothing was broken in her, but something had given way, like a tree that finally feels the wind after being steadfast for too long. That night, Amelia sat quietly in the old chair for hours before the babies woke up. Thoughts, memories, and the future drifted together. Daniel sat down opposite her. "You know," he said, "the first day you came, I asked myself, why did I choose you?" Amelia raised her head. "Because there was something in your eyes. When people cry, they lose something. But if you look, there is still something there. These children have seen the light. Me too." Amelia held her breath. "But Ingrid will come back. And this time it will be a legal threat. We could lose." Daniel shook his head. "With these papers, yes. But not with you. I will never lose you." The next morning, Daniel got ready to go to town. He had a folder in his hand. Birth certificates, care reports, witness statements. "Everything is here. I'll talk to the sheriff. Maybe a signature is still missing, maybe a word. But if we have to fight, then we fight." Amelia was silent for a moment. Then she suddenly stepped forward and touched his arm. "If you're willing to fight for the kids, I'm ready to fight for you." For the first time, something broke open in Daniel's face. His harshness gave way. The lonely man in him quietly lowered his head. And on this day, they were no longer alone. Not only for the children, but also for each other. And perhaps for the first time, for a future. But Ingrid was not one to give up so easily. And the next step would be determined not only by the law, but also by the darkness of the past. The city was silent. Daniel walked towards the sheriff's office with the birth certificates of the babies and the nursing documents pressed tightly to his chest. He had his jacket on, but his hands were still calloused, his gaze determined. The people who passed him turned their heads away, some out of respect, some out of curiosity, but no one dared to look him in the eye. In the meantime, Amelia had not remained alone in the hut. One of the neighbors, Elsa, known for her upright posture despite her age, had come early in the morning. In her hand a basket full of baby clothes and warm rolls. Amelia was surprised when she opened the door, but in Elsa's eyes there was no judgment, but something else, cohesion. "Maybe no one told you openly," Elsa said, "but you have a place here, not only with Daniel, but with this country, this silence, these children." Amelia lowered her head. "Some still don't want me here. There are people who find the sun too much, but the sun rises anyway," said Elsa, and put the basket in the kitchen. Meanwhile, Daniel sat across from the sheriff at his desk. He opened the file slowly. He carefully lined up each document: the baby's health records, the care report from the village doctor, even a short letter from neighbor Elsa as a testimony. The sheriff pulled his hat a little lower into his forehead. "Ingret is a strong woman," he said. "But these documents, that tells a different story." Daniel replied without looking up. "That's not my story. It's hers. The one created by Jacob, Leo, and Amelia." The sheriff nodded. "I know you, Daniel. You are a quiet person, but your silence is not a breakdown, but patience. I will present these papers to the court. But in such cases, sometimes the hearts speak more than the laws. Amelia has to come too. She should show how she cares for these children and how much she loves them." When Daniel returned home that evening, it was not only Amelia who was waiting for him outside the door. Jacob and Leo had been taken out of their cradles, wrapped in blankets, and placed on the veranda. Amelia sat on the floor, holding both children to her chest. When their eyes met, a decision had long since been made. "The sheriff is calling you," Daniel said. "But we have to convince more than the laws, the hearts. Tomorrow we will go to court." Amelia just nodded. "I do everything for these children. But for you, I even put my heart on the table." The next morning there was a silent preparation in front of the hut. Daniel put on his old but clean jacket. Amelia wore the blue embroidered dress that Daniel had secretly repaired and that had been ready for weeks. When she saw herself in the mirror, she was ashamed for the first time, not of her past, but of what she was now. Because that was real. When they reached the city, a crowd of people was waiting outside the courtroom. Ingret was among them. She wore a black hat with a veil, but her elegance could not hide the anger she was hiding. When they entered the courtroom, a blanket of silence fell over everything. The sheriff submitted the paperwork. Daniel took an oath. He told every detail from the day the babies were born to the present day. When it was Amelia's turn, it became even quieter. She stood up. Her voice trembled at first, but then became stronger. "I didn't give birth to these children, but they have grown in my heart, not in my belly. Being a mother doesn't just mean breastfeeding. It means staying awake at night, catching them when they fall. And I rocked her to sleep every night. Every morning, I am reborn with her smile." Ingret jumped up. "That's nonsense. This woman can't even have children. Family means blood and origin." The judge took off his glasses. "And love too," he said slowly. Then he turned to the sheriff. "The certificates are sufficient. The documents are solid. I announce my verdict." At that moment, Amelia's heart almost stopped. At that moment, she waited for a lifelong breath. And then, Jacob and Leo are officially awarded to Daniel Mallister and Amelia R. Mallister as joint caregiver. The name change was entered in the court register. Amelia looked at Daniel. He just lowered his head and smiled slightly. The courtroom was silent, but an orchestra was playing inside. At that moment, only one sentence echoed in Amelia's heart. "This time no one can sell me. 'Cause now I'm more than a thing. I'm a family. 2 of 2. When they came back from the court, the sun was slowly setting. The sky turned orange as the babies slept quietly in the back seat of the carriage. On the way home, they did not speak a word. Because there is a silence that is like a celebration. In such moments, you just want to hear your heart beating, because words are not enough. When Daniel stopped the horses, someone was waiting on the porch of the cabin. At first, Amelia did not recognize him. Hidden in the shadows, head bowed, hands in pockets. The man didn't seem to belong there, but he waited. The tension crept out of the ground like a rattlesnake. Daniel's steps slowed down. Amelia took the babies in her arms, but she didn't let the man out of her sight. Finally, the man raised his head and Amelia's blood froze. She knew those eyes. Her husband's cousin, Ingrid's lapdog, Tobias. "Amelia," he said, his voice sounding ice cold. "Congratulations. A decision was made, but there are still things that need to be discussed." Even before Daniel approached, his eyes hardened. "What do you want to discuss?" "The verdict is clear." Tobias shook his head. "The law is not always the last word. Sometimes some people choose other ways." This was not just a threat. It was an open declaration of war. And Daniel understood that immediately. "If you go one step further," he said quietly but determinedly, "this step will lead you not only into the mud, but into the grave." Tobias smiled. But it was not a smile, but a warning. "Not me, but this woman," he said. "Ingret doesn't give up. This is not over yet. And if you wake up one morning and can't find the children, then you will know real pain." That night, the doors were locked. The the windows nailed shut with boards. Daniel took the old shotgun down from the attic. Amelia looked anxious at first, but then she nodded. If we have to defend ourselves, then I use whatever I have, she said. Over time, the wind became stronger and began to whip against the hut. It was no longer quiet outside. A restlessness, like the howling of jackals, settled over everything. The babies felt the tension and were restless. Amelia pressed Leo to her breast while she changed Jacob's diaper. Daniel trembled and added wood. But the real storm did not come from outside, but from within. Amelia looked at Daniel. There was no anger in her eyes. Don't worry. Only one thing: determination. If you really see me as a family, she said, then give me not only protection, but also strength. You brought me to this hut, but I made a home out of it. And this home is now a fortress that must be defended. Daniel stepped closer and put his hand on hers. You didn't just come, you changed my life. Now I'm defending everything with you. But I will never leave you and the children alone. Neither Ingret nor the past can destroy us. At midnight, a cracking sound was suddenly heard. Then glass broke. Daniel immediately ran into the children's room. Amelia reached for the lamp and went out onto the veranda. A shadow appeared in the moonlight. Under the window, he did not flee. He waited. Ingret, she had a piece of paper in her hand, slowly put it on the floor and looked directly at Amelia. The war has begun, she whispered, and you won't win it. My blood is more deeply rooted in this land than yours. Amelia did not answer, but when she lowered the lamp and stepped back, there was only one thing in her eyes. This time I won't be afraid. The paper remained lying around. In the morning, Daniel opened it and saw that the documents looked official, but one was almost fake. It was issued in the name of a children's home, but bore a seal that had never existed. It was part of a secret plan to overturn the court ruling. And at that moment, Daniel understood. Ingret was not just threatening. She was ready to act. The babies were still safe. The hut was still standing. But the world outside was now a circle, a slowly narrowing, and everything could break with one step. But in Amelia's gaze, in Daniel's hands, and in the calm breathing of the children, there was only one thing: resistance, despite. And sometimes the strongest weapon is a mother's heart. The storm hit shortly before dawn. This time, not only the sky shook, but also the doors. While the wind tried to tear down the edges of the roof, 3 people inside had to make a decision. Daniel burned the forged documents in the oven. While the flames turned every lie to ashes, the truth came to light. This was no longer a family affair, but a question of humanity. Amelia carried Jacob on her back, held Leo tightly in her arms. Her gaze was directed into the darkness. This house is no longer just a shelter, she said. It's our battlefield, and these children are our reason. Daniel took the axe with the iron handle from the lowest shelf in the stable. He hadn't touched it for a long time. This is ours. No fake seals, no curse of the past can change that. At that moment, hoof beats approached from afar. Not one, but 3 horses. Suddenly the hut was surrounded. One shouted, "Give the children out, then nothing escalates." Ingret stood in the middle. She wore a black cape, a stone-studded veil on her head. Her eyes as cold as an executioner, her voice as cunning as a snake. "If you don't hand them out now, I'll get them back through official channels. And then you lose not only the children, but everything." Amelia stepped out onto the veranda. She wore her old but mended blue dress, her hair braided, only determination in her eyes. "I didn't give birth to her, but they are burned into my heart. They're not like they're not mine, they're a part of me." At that moment, Jacob's crying could be heard from the house. Then Leo. Her crying did not come from fear, but because of the palpable tension. Amelia took another step. "If these children call me Mama, then I fight for them. If you have a blood bond, I put the bond of my heart against it, and the heart and soul wins." Daniel stood next to her. He had laid down the axe. He held only one document in his hand, the court ruling, notarized. "If you're here despite this document, you're illegal, Ingret," he said. "And if you go one step further, you'll never own anything on this land again." One of the riders hesitated. Maybe he knew about the forged papers. Maybe he just saw the imperturbability in this woman's eyes. He withdrew. The other joined him. Only Ingret remained. Her gaze turned to Amelia. "You made me what I am now. You destroyed my family." Amelia did not lower her head. "No, you sold me, and you destroyed everything. I just put my shards back together. And now, I'm nobody's property anymore. I am the foundation of my own home." Ingrid was silent for the first time. Her face froze. Then she turned around. Before she mounted her horse, she looked back once more. But there was no more anger in that look, no pride, only defeat. She disappeared silently. And as if the earth was never ready to carry her steps again, a final silence reverberated. Hours later, the babies were asleep. The hut was quiet again. The wind had turned into a gentle breeze. Daniel was in the kitchen while Amelia stood at the window and looked out. "We can go now if you want," said Daniel. Amelia turned around. "I don't want to leave. For the first time, I want to stay." Daniel stepped closer and slowly took her hand. "We didn't build a house here. We have written a story, and you are the heart of this story." At that moment, Amelia's eyes filled with tears. But those tears were not a thing of the past. They were tears born of roots, belonging, and love. A few weeks later, the neighbors began to come. As always, Elsa was the first. Together they planted flowers. Jacob and Leo played in the dirt while Daniel repaired a cradle on the porch. Amelia returned to the kitchen. The bread that baked in the old oven spread its scent throughout the house, like a warm cloud of security. That day, Jacob came to her with muddy hands, hugged her knee, and said something. "Ma," just one syllable, but it meant everything. And while Amelia stroked his hair gently, she whispered, "No storm will destroy us now." If this story touched you too, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel. Because sometimes a silent hand extended by a stranger can rewrite an entire life.